Today, I want to talk about a few things that we gleaned from Lincoln Riley's spring football availability, and all that's coming up after the bumper.
Don't be cornering me. Hold up. Time. You gotta help me with that corner shit.
What's up, kid folk? It's RJ Young. I am not on a step mill. Consider hitting the like and subscribe button because I upload a video every single day. It's always college football related, sports related. We have a good time. Today, let's talk a little bit about some of the things that we gleaned from Lincoln Riley's spring football availability. And I think at the top of the list for me is this news of Billy Bowman being listed as defensive back, which means that Alex Grinch won round one between Riley and himself about what position Billy Bowman is going to play. Though I still believe there's a lot of discussion about this kid that's going to end up with him playing both sides of the ball in one way, shape, or another, and to say nothing of having an opportunity to go back there and return kicks. While Marvin Mims might have become Oklahoma's punt returner, not just last year, but of the future, Bowman might actually have an opportunity to replace both TJ Pledger and Trey Brown returning kicks. This is a kiddo who was the number 2 ranked player in the country according to Rivals, and really for me as a 5-star player, helped Denton Ryan win a Texas 5A state championship as a senior, caught 1,207 yards worth of passes, 15 touchdowns as a senior, chose Oklahoma over Georgia, LSU, and Texas, and at one point was committed to Texas. And one of the things that I think really drew him to Oklahoma was this opportunity he was going to have to play offensive football. When I talked to Billy Bowman on this show, one of the things he pointed to was that he's much more of a slot back kind of player. He sees himself as the guy that can be tailback, wide receiver, and play that H-back role, that slot receiver role. He, for me, is a Christian McCaffrey type. He's that fast, he's that agile, he's that explosive. But I also understand listing him as a DB and putting him into a DB's mentality is something that it's going to lend itself to him down the line, because it's one thing to be preternaturally gifted with the ball in your hands. It is an entirely different skill set to learn to play defensive back. And if he's playing the kind of position I think he's going to be playing, which is that nickel slot corner spot, that's a great place for him to be. It's also a spot that we're going to watch a lot more closely now that Brendan Radley-Hiles is going to Washington, having graduated in 3 years. That nickel slot is now open, right? Jeremiah Cradell is a dude that I'm going to be paying attention to throughout this process and going up to the fall, how he is talked about. And really, if it's Bowman, Cradell, and perhaps Justin Harrington all competing for that spot, I think you're going to be in a good place. Jaden Davis can really go out there and play that spot. We'll see if some of the other younger players figure into this, along with guys that have transferred in. And that's the next thing. Eric Gray, Keyshawn Lawrence, and Wanye Morris are all, well, I was going to make that joke. Let's see if I can still make that joke. Eric Gray, Keyshawn Lawrence, or Key Lawrence, and Wanye Morris are all boys to men on this here roster. And I thought it was real cool that Eric Gray secured the number 0 for himself. I really like seeing the 0 on the kiddos. I would much rather see the 0 on a defensive lineman, a la Lou Nix, RIP. But I love seeing the big men with the single digit. It's one of my favorite things in football. But Eric Gray going to be out there competing with Kennedy Brooks for playing time. And that's another thing. Kennedy Brooks is back, having rushed for 2,000 yards so far in his career. He opted out due to the pandemic, along with Stacey Wilkins and Jalen Redmond. Jalen Redmond is another guy to keep your eye on because he and Ronnie Perkins were the 2 best pass rushers that Oklahoma had in 2019. Redmond left the Sooners for 1 year after finishing at 6'3", 266, and returns at 6'3", 284. Real good for him because he's already playing that defensive tackle spot inside, the one that Isaiah Thomas filled in and did a great job with. If you can add Redmond to the mix with Thomas, Ellison, and Winfrey, you're going to be real stout through the middle. That's a great move. I just hope that it's good weight and it's weight that he can continue to carry, because we're still talking about Jalen Redmond, who hasn't played a whole lot of football. This guy basically is a basketball player until his sophomore, junior years of high school. The last thing that I thought was important to point to is what Riley had to say about how his guys were getting down in the weight room and how they were getting down in their preparation for spring football. They expect to have all 15 practices. They've had a couple of players already get vaccinated, and we're all hoping for a return to normalcy by June. Normalcy being the end of the dead period, recruiting and in-camp evaluations leading into what we all hope is a season that looks a lot more like 2019 than 2020. But also, they have some challenges at wide receiver, but good challenges because they have a lot of talent there and experience there. And you can tell this 21 group is extremely experienced. They know what they're doing. They know what their jobs are. They have their leaders. Even guys like Pat Fields being out due to having a shoulder surgery cleanup is going to give other guys opportunities to get some valuable reps during spring football. And repping it out is the best way to get better at playing football. My best friend, Jerry, or one of my best friends, Jerry Ostrowski, always likes to say, the best thing about football is playing football. The only way to get better at playing football is playing football. You got to get the reps in there. And I have that criticism of a lot of coaches in that they're going to rep the guys that they feel have the most talent as opposed to getting everybody the same amount of snaps that they could possibly get. Because I get that it ain't Little League, but you're not going to get any better if you don't have a guy in there getting reps. So you have to be really judicious about making sure that happens, but also you got to be up front and center, as coaches say, and try to go get your reps. Sometimes that backfires, though, because you got upperclassmen who are going to be like, what are you doing, child? Get out of my way. And then you get into some fights and whatnot, but that's team politics, and we don't really need to get into team politics, but I do want to make you aware of team politics. So as we continue to see how this team turns out, we know what the landscape is. Rattler is your starting quarterback, but who is his new starting center? That is going to be an interesting question that gets answered. If it's Andrew Rain, wow, that's going to be awesome. Chris Murray on one side, Marquise Hayes on another side. We'll figure out who the tackle is. It's going to replace Adrian Ely. My hope is that Bray Walker breaks through. There's a lot of really good options on this team. You're going to be stout at tailback with Gray, with Brooks. And my goodness, Seth McGowan, on it goes. We know about Mims. We know about Hazelwood. We know about Weiss. Drake Stoops is going to get a lot of attention if for no other reason than his dad is now my colleague at Fox. Shout out to Bob Stoops, who is taking Urban Meyer's chair at Big Noon. I'm excited about that. Really can't wait to work with Coach Stoops. That's going to be a lot of fun. And I believe one of the highlights that really we ought to talk a little bit more is not necessarily the Tennessee transfers, but Micah Bowen's coming in there out of Penn State. That's a guy that, he was good coming out of high school, and for him to just slide in there in that spot that Chandler Morris left open is not a small thing. All right, that's it for me. Doses.